Today is 5th November 2021. Does any Singaporeans right now have the feeling that Singapore government has gone rogue and mad? This is the latest news to come out from the Singapore government, or rather a mouthpiece of the Singapore government. Singapore started its vaccination for the population starting early this year. It has gained momentum, and by end of this year, the efforts are relentless and it's getting crazy and mad. I am very angry right now, and I'm starting to fear for my own life. Let's look at the latest news that's coming out from the mouthpiece of the Singapore government today. He's calling to vaccinate all seniors using a mandate. So it's compulsory vaccination for all seniors. This doesn't make sense. He claimed that 67% of the serious cases in hospitals are from the 1.5% of seniors who are unvaccinated. He claims also that 15 to 20% of the serious cases in hospitals in Singapore are due to unvaccinated below 60 years old. This is clearly may not be a truthful news. The Singapore government is starting to publish serious cases and deaths in hospitals without releasing the percentage of those who are unvaccinated, who are partially vaccinated, or fully vaccinated. The Singapore government loves to put all the blame on unvaccinated for deaths and serious cases. But why has it stopped revealing? Like for yesterday, 12 people who have died. Why has the Singapore government stopped revealing whether the 12 who have died are fully vaccinated or unvaccinated? If they are unvaccinated, Singapore government would definitely proudly claim that they are all from unvaxxed people. However, it has stopped disclosing the deaths percentage from those who are vaccinated, unvaccinated, or partially vaccinated. Singapore government is concealing a lot of information from the public and is only choosing to report what it wants to report. We cannot trust the figures from the Singapore government anymore. There is totally no transparency. So let's look at Kelvin Cheng's calling for compulsory vaccination for all seniors. This is a total bullshit. Unvaccinated people have been banned from malls, dining in, and going to attractions since 13 October 2021. Our Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has announced on 9 October 2021 regarding that punishment for unvaxxed to not be able to enter malls, not be able to dine in, and not be able to go to attractions. And on 13 October 2021, it has been enforced. Unvaccinated people in Singapore have not been allowed to go to malls, not been allowed to dine, not been allowed to go to attractions for close to 3 weeks now. But the number of COVID cases in Singapore is still high, is climbing. So tell me, is this a pandemic of the vaccinated or is it a pandemic of the unvaccinated? It is clearly a pandemic of the vaccinated. So Singapore government is not being transparent in releasing the numbers regarding COVID cases and deaths in Singapore, and keep trying to claim that the unvaccinated are causing the COVID cases, unvaccinated are causing serious COVID cases and deaths in hospital. We have to seriously doubt the claims of the Singapore government because the facts are contrary to that. Unvaccinated people have been banned from almost everything for close to 3 weeks, and the COVID cases are still rising. COVID deaths are still rising, and Singapore government is still trying to blame the unvaccinated for causing these COVID cases and deaths. We all know that vaccinated people can spread the virus as much, if not more, than unvaccinated people. So looking at the facts and figures, this is starting to look like a pandemic of the vaccinated. So today this is the first crazy news that comes out. Kelvin Cheng calling for compulsory vaccination for seniors. The second news that comes up today is Ho Ching saying that starting middle next year, only those who have taken 3 jabs, that is including the 3rd booster shots, will be considered fully vaccinated. So those Singaporeans who refuse to take the 3rd booster jab will be considered unvaccinated. They will lose their vax status next year if they refuse the 3rd booster jab. So Singaporeans, do you start having the feeling that the Singapore government is rogue and mad right now because they have been pushing very hard and they have been punishing the unvaxxed in Singapore relentlessly? Okay, let's look at what the Singapore government is trying to do next. Singapore government is trying to vaccinate children between 5 to 11 years old starting next year, 2022. We all know that children are not affected much by COVID virus at all. So we should not even vaccinate children who are so young, because there are suspicious ingredients in the vaccine such as graphene oxide, and there are long-term side effects that are not still unknown. So how can we vaccinate children who are healthy but by giving them a jab that you don't really know how it can hurt them in the long term? So next time, will Singapore government say no jab, no school? The latest punishment on unvaxxed is that the Singapore government announced that starting from January 2022, employers in Singapore can fire unvaxxed employees as a last resort. So starting January 2022, Singapore government is giving an ultimatum to all unvaxxed employees to jab or job, to choose between jab or job. The coercion from the Singapore government is extremely relentless and extremely high-handed. So the Singapore government can keep claiming that taking the COVID vaccine is voluntary, but it is not true, because the coercion is very harsh, it's very heavy-handed, and high-handed and extremely relentless. Let me question. FDA has advised against booster shots for people below 65 years old. So why is the Singapore government still pushing so hard for booster shots right now for anybody above 30 years old? There are so many questions that we have to ask. Because the Singapore government is not being transparent in showing us the facts and figures. The Singapore government has been using mainstream media every day to relentlessly push for COVID vaccines. And for the past few weeks, the Singapore government is very high-handed and starting to discriminate and punish the unvaxxed in Singapore by banning them from malls, dining in and attractions, and then giving unvaccinated employees the ultimatum of choosing between jab or job. There are many adverse reactions from these COVID vaccines, but they have been swept under the carpet and not reported and censored from the mainstream media. So why is the Singapore government relentlessly pushing for COVID jabs when there are many adverse reactions that they are covering up? So we have to look at all the actions of the Singapore government and question them. Are they doing what is right for the people, or they're doing what they want? We can see that these vaccines are not effective at all, because the higher the vaccinated rate in a country, like for example right now in Singapore, the higher the number of COVID cases. Many people who are fully vaxxed are falling sick from COVID. So Singapore right now is experiencing its highest number of COVID cases and deaths, but we have one of the highest vaccination rate in the world. Right now, 85%. So tell me, common sense, are the vaccines working? The vaccines are not working. With an 85% vaccination rate in Singapore, the cases are still so high. In fact, the highest it's ever been. And this is similar to other countries in the world who are highly vaccinated, such as Israel. The higher the vaccination rate and percentage, the higher the number of COVID cases. So let us look at facts and figures, and let's ask intelligent questions and question the actions of the Singapore government. Why is the Singapore government pushing COVID vaccines so hard when it has been shown that these vaccines are not effective? Why is it trying to start giving to young children who are not very much affected by COVID starting next year? Why is the Singapore government trying to give to children between 5 to 11 years old, including those who are healthy? And it won't stop at the first jab, it won't stop at the second jab, it won't stop even at the third booster jab. COVID vaccinations are expected to go on forever, once every 6 months. So why is the Singapore government pushing COVID vaccines so hard onto Singaporeans? Singapore government seems to be very keen to achieve 100% vaccination rate, which means everybody not just have to take the first 2 jabs, but continuous boosters for life to maintain their vax status in Singapore. Let's look at what the Singapore government has invested in. Singapore government has invested billions of dollars in Pfizer and Moderna. Temasek has invested US 250 million in Pfizer. EDB Singapore has invested US 500 million with other investors in Moderna. Ho Ching is on the board of Wellcome Leap, which is a company that does research on mRNA vaccines. And Pfizer is setting up a factory in Singapore and an office in Singapore. So there is clearly a conflict of interest for Singapore government to push mRNA vaccines very hard. So now that we know all these, unvaxxed have been banned from almost everything for more than 3 weeks, and COVID cases and deaths in Singapore are rising. So is this a pandemic of the vaccinated or a pandemic of the unvaccinated? I think it's starting to look like a pandemic of the vaccinated. Singapore government is not transparent at all in releasing facts and figures to Singaporeans. And mainstream media is just publishing news every day to push for COVID vaccines. So can we say that? So how can we know what they are saying is the truth or false? We cannot trust the Singapore government anymore. We cannot trust the mainstream media anymore. There are many adverse reactions that are being swept under the carpet and being censored. Why is this so? So why are they pushing so hard for boosters when FDA has clearly voted against giving boosters to people below 65 years old? Singapore government is starting to give booster shots to people who are above 30 years old right now. Why is the Singapore government discriminating and punishing the unvaxxed so hard in Singapore and so relentlessly? First, by banning them from malls and from dining in and attractions, and then making them to choose between jab or job in January 2022. And Singapore next year will be pushing very hard for the 3rd booster shot, because Ho Ching today has already said those who refuse to take the 3rd booster shot next year, middle next year, will be considered unvaccinated. So there are lots of things that we have to question, from the non-disclosure of facts and figures by the Singapore government to its high investments in Moderna and Pfizer COVID vaccines, to all its actions which has gained momentum very fast in the last few weeks, to heavily and relentlessly punish the unvaxxed. And looking at Calvin Ching's statement today is very unsettling, unnerving. I'm very angry. I'm so scared for my life, because now they can mandate vaccination for seniors. Then next time they can mandate vaccination for adults. And then they'll continue and mandate vaccination for children. And they may not stop there. You'll go to toddlers and babies. So all Singaporeans, Do you start having the feeling that Singapore government may have gone rogue and mad? I certainly do. I am very angry. I am very scared. I am scared for my life. I'm scared for the lives of my loved ones, my parents, my siblings, myself, my child, all my loved ones. So let's take time to think very hard and think critically about what reality is showing us. And if we think Singapore government is not doing the right thing right now and in the very near future, we have to stop them.